Brent Venables is calling plays in 2025 for Oklahoma. So there was rumor and speculation that Jim Knowles, the defense coordinator for Ohio State, was going to lead the program after the national championship and head on down to Norman. He had experience working at Oklahoma State, but then he ends up taking the job in State College. And now he's working with James Franklin in what is hopefully going to be the year where everything actually goes right for Penn State. But Oklahoma still has to make some hires to its defensive staff. So yesterday, it's announced that Nate Drelling, the defensive coordinator at Arkansas State, who previously worked at Utah State, and Wes Goodwin, the former defensive coordinator at Clemson, are joining forces down in Norman with Brent Venables. But Venables is going to be the primary play caller. Talked a lot about adding Nate and Wes to the roster. Also said that it was a very good move for the team moving forward. But he also said, I reflected on all facets of our program over the past several weeks. Since I have been hired as head coach, we've carefully assembled the defensive personnel and scheme that is suited to compete at the highest level. We built a deep and talented roster ready for this moment. I have high expectations for our program and will do everything in my power to achieve the goals to our players. To that end, I'll be taking over defensive play calling responsibilities for 2025. Now, what do we make of this move? Just all in general. Me personally, I love it. I think it's absolutely the right call at this point. Because when you think about Brent Venables and how he got the job down in Norman, Oklahoma at Memorial Stadium to take on over for Lincoln Riley, what was the thing that stood out? It wasn't his former head coaching experience. It wasn't the fact that he had experience actually leading a team or a roster or building up relationships out in the program. No, it was that he was a defensive play caller and a damn good one too. Helped win a national championship at Oklahoma back in the early 2000s. Helped win 2 national championships at Clemson underneath Dabo Swinney. One of the better recruiters in the country. People were talking about him with his X's and O's and scheming up, and they said that he was a genius at the sport. And now it's year 3 or year 4. My apologies. It's year 2 in the SEC. And you have to realize that what are the expectations out in Norman? Compete for an SEC championship. Compete for a college football playoff berth. Compete for a national title. Don't play second fiddle to anybody. And you shouldn't. It's Oklahoma. It's a blue blood. It is a program that deserves the damn respect that it has earned over the last 8 decades. And you want to continue that. They knew what they were signing up for in the SEC. And what do we have as a copy for Brent Venables so far? Well, he went 6-7 in year 1. He had a breakout 10-win season in year 2. And in year 3 in the SEC, a 6-7 performance with really only one great signature win over Alabama. An Alabama team that struggled to beat up on a Michigan squad that was out of all of its talent in the ReliaQuest Bowl, and they were at near full capacity. That's what we were dealing with. So if you have an identity for the program, why are you not going to go all in? And that's what I think the main point that we have to realize here, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is Brent Venables' Roman Empire. This is his identity. Whatever happens this season will be on Brent Venables, and that's the way it should be. So many people are trying to figure out, is Venables the right guy for the job? Is he only going to be a CEO approach? Is he only going to have an identity with the defensive side? Is there ever going to be a consistent balance on the offensive personnel? To which I say, you'll get your answer this year. If Venables is the one calling plays and he's still able to do the due diligence of a head coach and be able to work in the daily duties of recruiting and selling the program and building an identity, and then the defense continues to stay at the same trajectory it was underneath Zach Alley, well, then what's the problem here? There is still a very solid overall personnel that's coming on in. And more importantly, even though they are losing talent, the way they've been able to regroup with the transfer portal and the young up-and-comers, I don't believe Oklahoma's going to miss a beat next year. Last season in the SEC, first year, finished 19th nationally and 5th in total defense in yards allowed. They were also top 25 in scoring defense. And you got the architect of this unit still taking on over next season. And now he's going to have the final say. Meanwhile, Nate Drelling, who I believe is a rising star in this industry, is going to get acclimated to what is Norman football. He's going to be able to learn the ins and outs, the intricacies of what you want in a guy like Brent Venables. And in a year from now, if Brent Venables still is the actual head coach down in Norman, well, here's the good news. Drelling, I think at this time, is probably going to take that next step forward. He still is probably going to be able to now get to have a say in the play calling. And what if this is just another element and another branch of the Venables coaching tree getting opportunities elsewhere? Wes Goodwin, another guy that maybe is not a great play caller and certainly had his lulls this past season at Clemson, one of the worst run defenses in college football, or at least in the Power 4 programs. But that doesn't mean that he's not a good defensive mind. And you're putting all these pieces together out in Norman, where defense is the backbone of this team in a new era of SEC football, and you're telling me that they can't finalize it and put everything together to where 8-4 is possible, 9-3, maybe even put yourself in a better position to where you're at least having your defense control the games. And then you let your offense do what it needs to do. Ben Arbuckle comes on in from Washington State, and he just helped a guy in Cam Ward get to the New York City, or at least become a hot commodity on the portal market. And then he does the exact same thing with John Mateer a season later. And John Mateer now is not only the returning talented quarterback with the most touchdowns in college football, but he also has a good understanding about what Ben Arbuckle wants. It's like having a second coach on the field, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think that people realize that. You got a dude that understands the most influential position, and he gets every single little detail, minute problems, and can turn the corner instantly and put you in a position to where your team is now able to have the same balance and direction. And the thing that I love about this is that, again, quarterback and OC speaking the same language. Now you get to teach that down to everyone else in the building, from the offensive line to the wide receivers to the tight ends to the third stringers that may eventually have to step on up like we saw last year out of Norman. Everyone knows what the assignment is for this program. So I see no fault here. And here's the other part that I really want to bring on up. We talk about Oklahoma and how Brent Venables is now calling plays, and how Brent Venables is the one who has to be able to meet expectations. Now, Brent Venables, maybe he's not the right guy for the job. But we do this all the time in football. We do this in the NFL too. What happens when the offensive head coach is calling plays? Because you know Josh Heupel is the one calling plays out in Knoxville. You know that Lane Kiffin's the one calling offensive plays out in Oxford. You know that there's other coaches in the past that have absolutely called offensive plays. Look at what's going on currently right now down in Tallahassee. We watched as last season Mike Norvell called plays. Eli Drinkwitz has called plays out in Columbia. So why is it a problem that a defensive coach is calling plays, but an offensive coach just gets to walk on by and say, oh no, it's okay? Super Bowl 59, one game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether you're predicting the first touchdown, who will take home the MVP trophy, or the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to place your bets and feel the thrill of every moment. With live betting all game long, you can jump into the action, adjust your bets, and ride the wave of excitement from kickoff to the final whistle. Plus, to make the Super Bowl even sweeter, new customers can score $200 when you make your first bet. Just place a $5 bet, and if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head on over to FanDuel.com/SECU and bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Disclaimer, must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus in D.C. First online real money wager only, $5 first deposit required. Bonus issue with non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Okay, back to the show. I think this is a really good move for a ton of reasons. The first is, this is now Venables' team. If Venables is going to go down with the ship, he is going down on his terms, on his standards, on his beliefs. He sees a vision of where this team can go. And if it doesn't meet it, well, the only person to blame is himself. You can't say, oh, well, it was the offensive play calling or it was the defensive coordinator that wasn't in a really good spot. No, you're the defensive play caller. This is your team. This is your baby. And if it doesn't work on out, Oklahoma has a reason to say, we have to go in a different direction if we want to be that next premier program in the SEC. They can do that. And guess what? They probably will, because they should, because there are realistic expectations out there. But what if things end up panning out? What if, again, you still see Venables act like the CEO? He ends up being the guy that people believe is good enough to sell the program and the identity of Sooner football. And he lets Ben Arbuckle call the plays on offense. And he lets the offensive personnel work together. And he has a little bit of a say, and he's understanding what is going to be the play design. They're going to have what is the actual formations and what are going to be the play calls. And he has a say in that. But when you look at that, what are you seeing? Him still just take control of the defense and let the offense be its own entity. And they end up going 9-3 next year. And maybe they don't finish in the college football playoff running, but they upset a couple teams. They beat Missouri. They beat Tennessee in Knoxville. They beat Alabama a second time. They beat Texas in the Red River Shootout. And those are 4 wins against potentially ranked teams. Is that not sustainability trending in the right direction? And then you get a bowl game victory and you have 10 wins. And now we're back to back looking at what Venables has done. 6-7, 10-3, 6-7, 10-3. Is that not good enough for year 2 in the SEC to at least know you have, number one, the right guy, the dude who understands what needs to be fixed with this program, and number 3, and probably most importantly, growth in the conference, to where year 3 now is where it all comes together. And John Mateer doesn't enter the NFL draft, and you have a ton of defensive players that are coming back in for another season because they love the culture out in Norman. And once again, you're right back in the running to be a team that ends up making it to the college football playoff and maybe wins an SEC title in year 3. All those things are possible. Everything is on the table, which I can appreciate. If you're going to be the one to have to face the music, you might as well do it your way. Billy Napier did it his way last year. Guess what happened? He ended up getting one more season to kind of turn the tides and put himself in a great position. And the buy-in from the culture never was gone in Gainesville. If the buy-in of the culture doesn't leave Norman, if the offense can take that next step forward with John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle, if the defense still is one of the more sound units in college football and in the SEC for 2025, you got the right guy. I believe Brent Venables, it's still too soon to decide, is he a good head coach or a bad head coach? It's 1 year in the SEC. It's a small sample size where a roster was completely depleted and he lost ample talent in year 1 to year 2. He lost an offense coordinator. I still think that this story has not been written on Brent Venables' tenure in Oklahoma. I think the next chapter is going to be the defining point to where, are we reaching the end of the book or are we expanding? But we aren't there just yet. So for anybody out there that wants to go ahead and say, this is Brent Venables, this is what will define his season, I completely agree with you. But the defining point of the season doesn't always have to be a negative outlook. It sometimes can be one of the biggest positive outlooks that we see in college football moving forward. That's just my 2 cents on the situation. I think it's a really good move. I have no issue with it whatsoever. I think Venables is the right guy for the job. I think he's going to do wonders working with this defense. And he's going to turn out 2 really good coordinator options in the future for other teams.